Now I'm moving into the third part, which is to share with you some of the examples that some of the leading universities have been working on, are doing, or perhaps planning to do for the future universities. So let's first take a look at new engineering education transformation. This happens at MIT, the top leading engineering university of the world, 2017 NEET. I would like to share with you what is NEET. The new engineering transformation program was launched in 2017 to reimagine engineering education at MIT. It is a cross-departmental endeavor with a focus on integrative, project-centric learning. The NEET offering so-called threads gives students unprecedented opportunity to immerse themselves in projects that are cross-disciplinary boundaries while earning a degree in their chosen major. NEET is promised to cultivate the essential skills, knowledge, and quality. It is a scholar-focused endeavor. NEET is based upon 4 principles. They have to deal with number 1, new machines and systems. Number 2, NEET is educating students to be makers and to be a discoverer. They need to make, they also to discover. They also find out what are the ways that students can learn the best, by which they are changing the mindset of the students, so-called NEET ways of thinking. The core values of NEET complements those of MIT, namely useful knowledge, society responsibilities, learning by doing, education as preparation for life, and the value of the fundamentals. So their core values encompass 5 areas. NEET values are rooted in the MIT mission to educate undergraduate students to become leaders who tackle the greatest challenges of the 21st century. And these values guide MIT's decision-making and inspired MIT educators to advance the community. So these are the values for the MIT NEET engineering transformation. A couple slides before, we mentioned NEET ways of thinking. In other words, every student who is enrolled in MIT under the NEET program needs to have their mindset set in such a way that they can think in a logical, orderly, but perhaps a different set of thought paths. NEET way of thinking encompasses learning how to learn a subject which is not perhaps known to you already, the new things, and how to make things, discovering things, the interpersonal skill, the personal skills and attitude, creative thinking, system thinking, critical and metacognitive thinking, analytical thinking, computational thinking, experimental, and humanistic. All these elements are included in the so-called NEET way of thinking, and those skills, mindsets, are all soft skills. My second example is on general education, which Harvard University perhaps is a good example. So-called 4 categories. These 4 categories include aesthetics and culture, that's one. Ethics and civics, that's the other one. And history, societies, and individuals, that's the third one. and science and technology in society. So there are 4 categories of general education courses. And the requirement is every student at Harvard must take at least 1 course in each categories. And beyond that, there are requirements in the college level. In addition to the general education requirement, which I mentioned above in the 4 categories, there are college requirements that includes language requirement, expository writing requirement, distribution requirement, and quantitative reasoning with data requirement. All these are also required, which constitutes the Harvard College curriculum. So that's the second level. And that's not all. There's another level, so-called divisional distribution. What is that? It says that for every student graduating in May 2020 or later, must complete 1 departmental, non-general ed type of courses in each of the 3 main divisions of Faculty Arts and Sciences, FAS, and the School Engineering and Applied Sciences, SEAS. In other words, above and beyond the 4 category courses, as well as the college required courses for general education, each and every student from Harvard University must take a general course, not general education course, but a course that's offered by a department in the arts and humanity, in social sciences, and in the science engineering of applied sciences. So there are these 3 layers, 4 categories, mandatorily required general education courses, which began to take effect in 2019. Now, the next example is close to home, National University of Singapore. They define so-called Agile University, NUS Agile. So what is Agile? NUS educational model, AGILE, which represents, A represents academics, which are courses. G represents global and experiential. You have to have experience in the international ground. I is industrial relevant. L is lifelong learning. And E is entrepreneurial. So AGILE represents the new form of educational model at the National University of Singapore. And it is very surprising and shocking to actually find out at NUS, the Agile educational model, they created so many courses, so many majors and minors of domain studies. For examples, in the curriculum, there are so-called 3 1/3. There are 3 1/3. What does that mean? It means that in the general education and the college requirement, that should amount to about 1/3 of total graduating credits. And also, the major requirement in any given major should be just about 1/3 as well. And the third part, the third 1/3, is unrestricted electives. This applies to both the College of Humanities and Sciences as well as the School of Design and Faculty of Engineering. In the Agile model of NUS, it's shocking to find out that National University of Singapore has hugely expanded the range of possibilities. There are over 700 double major pairings. It's easy for students to graduate with a double major within the 4 years of study. There's a combination of 700 double major pairings. And also there are 1,700 major plus minor pairings. Even more so, you can have 100,000 major with a double minor combinations. Thereby, students graduate from the Agile educational model of NUS can have a wide range of knowledge and skills. NUS Asia also emphasized interdisciplinary teaching and learning based upon a broad intellectual foundation comprising of general education and interdisciplinary modules. Built upon it, you have the domain knowledges, you synthesize it and integrate it to have so-called experiential, collaborative, and problem-based learning. In other words, on this broad foundation, you have pathways to integrate the domain knowledge horizontally in order to tackle real-life problems in the experiential, collaborative, and problem-based learning kind of methodology. The fourth example I would like to share with you is widely known Stanford 2025 Open Loop University. In the Open Loop University reform for Stanford 2025, it emphasizes open loop universities. Stanford emphasizes that students should have a residential college experience. They need to have the learning and living on campus together. As a matter of fact, learning is part of the living. Many soft skills, which we talked about before, can be nurtured, developed during the living period on the campus. So Stanford 2025 emphasizes exploring a shifting landscape. And the second element of Stanford 25 is the paced education. What is the paced education? It's a transformation from a traditional structured 4-year courses, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, going from freshman to sophomore, junior, and senior, into a form of learning which is have 3 phases of various lengths provided by personalized, adaptive, and calibrated learning. It's a pace based upon the individuals. It's not based upon a university system, very rigid, a year by another year. Instead, it's depending upon the student's intention, their willingness, and their different kind of a career goal. So the education is paced based upon individual mission-driven career. So that's the second part. The third part is so-called axis flip. So what is the axis flip? Again, in the old days, perhaps most universities the same thing, knowledge within a particular discipline was the criteria for graduation. If you study physics, you must study general physics, classical mechanics, quantum mechanics, electricity and magnetism, thermodynamics, and so on and so forth. Very structured. So the axis seems to be pointing in one direction and defined by the curriculum. For the Stanford 2025 for the future, they flipped the axis so that skill development became the foundation. What does that mean? That means if you want to have a certain mission which you want to complete, then I need to acquire the knowledge and the skills. That may be coming from different departments, different disciplines. It could be a combination of science, engineering, biology, and social sciences. That's what we call pay axis flip. Finally, in the Stanford 2025, there's the element so-called purpose learning. The purpose learning is not something which you do in terms of students declare a major. So I must have a certain courses as a foundation, built upon which I have some other advanced courses so that I can have a degree in certain major. And that's the traditional way of building up your majors. But here, students declare a mission. In other words, I want to do something. I want to be able to become a certain type of person who is going to work in certain area that requires certain combination of skills. So you declare a mission and couple their disciplinary pursuit with the purpose that fueled it. So that's so-called purpose-driven. Now let me talk about an example that National Taiwan University has been taken on as a project in year 2020, so-called concept for future universities. They also emphasize so-called open universities, a mission-driven curriculum, but they have some new things which have been given into their thoughts for the future university. The so-called alumni maintenance program, and the other one is called paced learning. Let's go over some of the slides to find out what their concepts are. The University for the Future, the concept of National Taiwan University, their visions are to elevate self-actualization, to advance collective intelligence, and to promote Commonwealth society. These are the vision for the NTU, future university. They also emphasize the following 4 elements in the so-called Ntu Core Values for the future universities. It is, first of all, a learner-centric open university. Learner is the center for the future universities. It has 4 components. On the top left is allow students to explore, exploration, experiential, to explore and experience. On the right-hand side, it's a cross-discipline and co-learning with your peers and also with your advisors. The lower left is active learning and guidance. You have to have a self-motivated active learning how to learn with guidance by your advisors. And the lower right-hand side is the open curriculum, put into trust into the students. So these are the core values for the NTU concept for the future universities. What's important in this concept is that NTU will define so-called domain knowledge, domain specialty. There are many domain specialties. Domain specialty forms the foundation of the innovative degree programs. Domain knowledge is not very extensive and very many credits hours of knowledges or skills. It's a condensed, it's a small but essential part of a certain domain knowledge. It could be just 30 credit hours. These domain knowledges, so-called domain specialties, can be sort of put together, connected, interconnected, to define a mission-driven educational purposes in order to have a cross-disciplinary degree programs. And you also think about honors program for which students can have even more flexibility and freedom to engage in learning for mission-driven, purpose-driven education. And you also consider the future education, as we all know, will be a blended learning. It's not just the traditional part of the in-person kind of education. And you also thinks about beyond the open curriculum, a so-called alumni maintenance program. That means for lifelong learner, student needs to relearn, continue to learn, lifelong learning of new knowledges and skills. Thereby, any graduate from NTU is welcome to return to the university after 10 years, 20 years, to take a series of courses, to learn new subjects, to be able to handle the new problems. That's what they call alumni maintenance program. And the other thing which they think about is so-called gap-paced learning, similar to the Stanford 2025. Allows students to have gap year, half a year, a month, a week, etc., to pursue, to explore other experiences, be it study abroad, exchange, traveling, internship, so on and so forth. And credit can be transferred. So these are the combination of the concepts, of the elements for the future universities that are being thought about and perhaps starting to carry out at the National Taiwan University. Finally, let me spend some time sharing with you the so-called 4-in-1 whole person education, which is taking place in my own university, NYCU, starting in 2021. There are 4 parts of education that NYCU requires freshman students entering into NYCU next year to take for their undergraduate studies. These 4 parts include the top disciplinary education, majors or minors. And on the right-hand side, there's a research and internship education. In other words, to have the practical experience of putting things in work. You can do undergraduate research, you can take an internship, you can do professional service learning, etc. On the left-hand side, there's a general education, which most universities in Taiwan have. But NYCU has undergone reform for the general education just 2021. We follow the model of Harvard general education, Harvard University. So we redefine the general education requirement to have a core courses, 4 categories, and so on and so forth. And finally, at the bottom, we have so-called community and peer education, which is a new element, new part of education. In other words, we emphasize the campus life experience, emphasize the importance of the soft skill learning. The education on the disciplinary part and the research and internship experience are carried out by the colleges and departments and other degree programs. So academic units, colleges, departments, or degree programs, it can be college-wide, it can be university-wide degree program, can define the majors, minors, cross-disciplinary, or mission-driven specialty education. For the general education part, as I mentioned before, NYCU has undergone a general education transformation. We have a core courses, we have 4 categories, similar to what Harvard University provides. It gives you across fields and free electives opportunities. We also emphasize language, writing, and communication skills. And for the peer and the community education, which is a new element in the 4-in-1 education at NYCU, we emphasize the living and learning, emphasize the campus life, extracurricular creative activities, physical education, cultural engagement, global perspectives, and social responsibility. And manning units in the university from the Office of Student Affairs, athletic offices, international offices, art centers, or even college and department and others can all come in to provide students with the peer and the community education. The purpose of a peer and community education is to produce intellectually and socially resilient individuals so that they can live a principled, caring, and productive lives. We emphasize in our motto for the peer and community education, the knowledge, practices, and attitude. In this part of education, we emphasize 5 competencies that students should learn, should be educated during their 4 years of study life. These 5 competencies include health living, both body and mind, interpersonal relationship and teamwork, leadership and service, the cultural engagement, and citizenship with global perspectives. These are the very important competencies because they are the essential parts of the soft skill that in the early part of my talk, which I mentioned, the enterprises, the companies, industries, like students to have before they join their companies. So for any students or professors or administrators to try to define the elements of a future educational goals and methods for your universities. In other words, when you try to position your university for the future, you need to look at the mission and practices. I have given you 6 examples from 6 different universities who are doing different things to change the educational methods, degree structure, and the learning content. Every university is different. It varies with university, depending upon the missions and practices of your own university. But it is important to know in my talk that innovative and integrated education for the value-added effects. Education includes living and learning. We need to be inclusive of a specialty learning of hard skills and liberal arts learning of soft skills. And this is actually required by all universities. Don't lose sight on the education of soft skills to your students. That is a must. The third conclusion I want to draw here is that the future university would be a dynamic, cross-boundary, complex system. It is no longer a linear, very sort of a departmental, a simple type of education. We have seen this in different examples in the MIT NEET, in the Stanford 2025, in the Taiwan University Concepts for the Future University. Thereby, we need to pay attention to students' curriculum, degree programs, and duration of studies without losing sight on living, lifelong learning, And also the education method will be a blended learning method. Both real and virtuals are working together to help our students to learn. The university for the future will not be structured as in the past. We need to emphasize the education and the learning of students is to identify the key problems and to have the ability and the willingness to self-study active learning processes. And finally, we need to have the skills and knowledge to solve the problem. So identify the key problems, motivate to learn actively, leading to the final solution of the problems. This whole process will become important for the future in universities. And the future university emphasizes not only just the pure knowledge, but also put into practices, as well as emphasizing the soft skills, the attitude that student would possess. I thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I enjoy sharing with you some of my thoughts.
Thank you very much.
You can have a new
Professor
mindset and putting into practices in your future study or teaching. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Haidin Chen, for the wonderful sharing. Now we have got Professor Haidin Chen online. Just hang on a minute. Hello, Professor Haidin Chen. Would you like to say hello to everybody? Turn on your mic, please. We can't hear you. Would you like to turn on your mic?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you very much. I have to apologize. There were some technical problems before, so I could not say hello to everybody online or in person. So a belated greeting from Haidin Chen, now in Illinois, United States. I'm very happy to have had a chance to speak to you, and I hope you have some takeaways, and you can perhaps use some of my thoughts and my advices and comments as a basis for you to define your own universities for the future. The talk has been reduced to about 45 minutes in order to meet the time constraint. But my original talk is about 1 hour and 10 minutes long. So if anybody who wishes to have the full version of the speech, I will be very happy to give it to you through the INTI International University of Malaysia. Once again, say hello to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we hope that Professor Haidin Chen, you will visit INTI one day. We'll see you then.
Yes, I will.
Thank you so much.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you.